Captain Taman stood on the bridge of the Horizon Dawn, watching the stars stretch across the viewing screen. His ship had traveled farther than any human vessel before. 3 years into deep space, and finally, they had found something. Not just planets or empty systems, but actual alien life. "Captain, we're picking up massive energy signatures ahead," said Haywan from her station. She was the chief science officer, and her instruments had been screaming warnings for the past 10 minutes. "It's a fleet, a big one." Taman nodded slowly. This was it. Humanity's first contact with another intelligent species. He had dreamed about this moment since he was a child. Would they be friendly? Would they share knowledge? Could humans finally join a galactic community? "Open a communication channel," he ordered. "Let's say hello." The screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at something that definitely wasn't human. The alien had scales like a lizard, red eyes that seemed to glow, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. It wore armor that looked both ancient and advanced at the same time. "I am High Prelate Tharn of the Veltorian Empire," the creature said. Its voice was deep and cold. "You will identify yourselves immediately. This is Captain Taman of Earth's vessel Horizon Dawn. We come in peace, seeking to establish diplomatic relations with other civilizations." Tharn made a sound that might have been laughter. "Earth? Never heard of it. Another primitive species wandering where they don't belong." The alien leaned forward. "You have entered territory claimed by the Veltorian Empire. By our law, you have two choices. Submit to our rule or be destroyed." Taman felt his blood run cold. This wasn't how first contact was supposed to go. Behind him, Tactical Officer Hyunwoo's hand moved closer to the weapons console. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," Taman said carefully. "We didn't know this space was claimed. We can leave peacefully and discuss this through proper channels." "There is no misunderstanding," Tharn replied. "Every species makes the same offer. Talk, negotiate, delay. It changes nothing." He pressed something on his chair. "Let me show you why negotiation is pointless." The screen split. One half still showed Tharn's face. The other half showed a beautiful moon orbiting a distant planet. Taman watched in horror as one of the Veltorian ships fired a single beam of purple energy. The beam hit the moon, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then cracks appeared across its surface, glowing with the same purple light. The moon exploded, breaking apart into millions of pieces. "That was our planet cracker weapon," Tharn said. "One of many we possess. Your people have 72 hours to surrender. Send us the coordinates of your homeworld. Kneel before the Empire, and you will be allowed to serve. Refuse, and your planet will share that moon's fate." "We don't kneel," Taman said quietly. Tharn's eyes widened slightly. Then he laughed again, longer this time. "Of course you do. They all do. Some species take the full 72 hours to accept reality, but they all kneel eventually. We have conquered 200 worlds. Not one has ever resisted successfully." He leaned back in his chair. "Your time starts now." The screen went black. Silence filled the bridge. Hyunwoo spoke first. "Captain, should I prepare weapons?" "Against that fleet? We'd last maybe 30 seconds." Taman sat down in his command chair heavily. "Hey-One, what did you learn from their ship during that transmission?" The science officer was typing rapidly, pulling up data on her screen. "Captain, I scanned their weapon when they fired it. I also got readings on their ship's defensive systems and power sources." She paused, looking confused. "This doesn't make sense." "What doesn't?" "Their technology. It's advanced, sure, but it's not that advanced. That planet cracker weapon? We developed similar weapons during the Resource Wars 60 years ago. We banned them because they were too dangerous, but the technology isn't new to us." She pulled up more data. "Their shields use a basic frequency modulation. Their weapons are powerful but slow to recharge. Their ships are big and intimidating, but not particularly fast or maneuverable." Taman stood up and walked to her station. "Are you saying we could fight them?" "I'm saying a species with our level of technology shouldn't be impressed by theirs. They act like gods, but their equipment is maybe 50 years ahead of ours at most. In some areas, we might actually be ahead of them." She looked up at him. Captain, I think they've been bullying species that are much less advanced than they are. They've never faced anyone who could actually fight back. Hyunwoo was checking his own systems. She's right, Captain. I'm looking at their fleet formation. It's designed for intimidation, not combat. They're grouped together in a way that makes them vulnerable to concentrated fire. Any military academy student would see the flaws. Taemin thought about Earth. He thought about humanity's history, the wars, the struggles, the times they almost destroyed themselves. Every generation had faced extinction and survived. Humans had fought with sticks and stones, then swords and guns, then nuclear weapons and worse. They had nearly wiped themselves out a dozen times. And every time, they had survived. These Veltorians had been conquerors for 10,000 years, Tharn had said. 10,000 years of easy victories against species that couldn't fight back. 10,000 years without a real challenge. Humans had been at war with someone or something for their entire existence. War was in their bones, in their blood, in their history books that were filled with more battles than peace treaties. Send a message to Earth, Taemin ordered. Full data burst. Everything we learned about the Veltorians. Tell them we have 72 hours before they arrive. And what do we do? Hyunwoo asked. Taemin smiled, and it wasn't a friendly expression. We watch, we learn, and we prepare to show these conquerors what humanity does to bullies. Haewon began transmitting the data. It would take time to reach Earth, but when it did, she knew what would happen. Earth's military had spent centuries preparing for hostile first contact. They had weapons, strategies, and contingency plans that were designed for one purpose, to make sure humanity survived. The Veltorians thought they had found another weak species to crush. They thought humans would panic, surrender, and beg for mercy like all the others. They were about to learn they had made a terrible mistake. They hadn't found prey. They had found predators. And humanity was very, very good at being predators. The transmission from the Horizon Dawn reached Earth 36 hours later. In that time, the Veltorian Empire had already broadcast their ultimatum across the galaxy. It was tradition, they said. Every species deserved to watch as the Empire demonstrated its power. On the Galactic Council Station, representatives from dozens of species gathered to watch. Most felt pity. Some felt relief that it wasn't their world facing destruction this time. None felt hope. Another one bites the dust, said Ambassador Kelm of the Nexari, a species that looked like tall, thin birds. I remember when the Veltorians came to our world. We surrendered in 40 hours. Smart choice. My people lasted 53 hours, added Representative Quarren, whose species had 4 arms and gray skin. We thought we could negotiate. We were wrong. At least the humans will learn the same lesson without losing too many lives. Only one representative looked troubled. Ambassador Lyra of the Luminary, beings made of what looked like living light, watched the countdown timer. Something feels different this time, she said quietly. They all feel different at first, Kelm replied. Then they all end the same way, with submission. While the galaxy watched and waited, Earth was preparing. In Geneva, Defense Director Sung Ho stood in the command center, surrounded by screens showing military installations across the planet and throughout the solar system. Next to him was Admiral Ji-woo, her face calm despite the chaos around them. The data from Captain Taemin is clear, Sung Ho said to the assembled generals and admirals. The Veltorians are strong, but they're not invincible. More importantly, they've grown lazy. Lazy? Asked one general. They destroyed a moon with one shot. They destroyed an undefended moon, Admiral Ji-woo corrected. Their weapon is slow, predictable, and requires time to charge. Any moving target with decent shields could avoid it. They use it to scare people, not to fight wars. She pulled up a hologram showing the Veltorian fleet formation. Look at this. They group their ships together for maximum visual impact. Impressive to look at, terrible for actual combat. One nuclear mine in the right spot could cripple a dozen ships. The room went quiet. Everyone was thinking the same thing. Could they actually win? President Hyojin entered the room. She was young for a president, only 45, but she had been elected because she was brilliant and tough. She looked at the faces around her and knew they needed to hear the truth. I need everyone to understand something, she said. Humanity has been preparing for this day since we first looked up at the stars. Every war game, every military exercise, every weapon we've developed has been built with one question in mind. What if they're hostile? She walked to the center of the room. The Veltorians think we're just another primitive species. They think we'll panic and surrender. They don't know our history. They don't know that we've faced extinction 100 times and survived every single one. Sung-Ho nodded. The resource wars alone killed 3 billion people. And we still came out stronger. The AI rebellion nearly destroyed our entire infrastructure. We fixed it and built better systems. Climate collapse, nuclear standoffs, pandemics that killed hundreds of millions. He smiled grimly. We're survivors. It's what we do best. So what's the plan? Asked Admiral Ji-woo. President Hyejin looked at her. We show them what real predators look like. Across Earth, people watched the countdown timer in the sky. The Veltorians had helpfully projected it where everyone could see it. 48 hours remaining until their fleet arrived. Many people were afraid, some were panicking, but many others were getting angry. In Seoul, university student Minho watched the timer and remembered his history classes. Humanity had never won by being stronger. They won by being smarter, meaner, and more stubborn than anyone else. They won by refusing to quit, even when quitting made sense. In Lagos, engineer Ife looked at the timer and went to work. She was part of the weapons development team that had been building just-in-case weapons for 20 years. Now it was time to use them. In São Paulo, pilot Rico checked his fighter jet and smiled. He had trained his entire life for combat. Finally, he would get to use those skills for something that mattered. Meanwhile, intelligence officer Yuna was doing something very illegal. She had hacked into the Veltorian communication network. It wasn't even that hard. Their security was terrible because nobody had ever dared to hack them before. What she found was shocking. Admiral, you need to see this, she said, calling Ji-woo directly. I've been reading Veltorian military communications. They haven't fought a real war in over 3,000 years. Not a single battle where the enemy fought back effectively. How is that possible? They only attack species that are centuries behind them technologically. It's not war, it's slaughter. Their soldiers aren't trained for combat. They're trained for intimidation and occupation. Their tactics, their strategies, everything is designed for fighting enemies who can't fight back. Admiral Ji-woo felt something cold settle in her stomach. It wasn't fear, it was anticipation. They've never faced a peer opponent. Not just a peer, they've never faced anyone who has even basic defensive capabilities. Admiral, I've seen their training records. Their soldiers practice parade formations more than combat drills. Their pilots have thousands of hours flying in straight lines and 0 hours of evasive maneuvering. Keep digging. I want everything you can find. Yuna went back to her work, and what she discovered over the next 12 hours changed everything. The Veltorian Empire wasn't an unstoppable force. It was a paper tiger that had never been tested. They ruled through fear and overwhelming numbers, but their actual combat capabilities were pathetic compared to their reputation. She found records of their wars. Species that surrendered immediately. Species that tried to fight with primitive weapons and were massacred. Not once in their records was there a battle where the enemy had similar technology, trained soldiers, and actual military strategy. The Veltorians were the biggest fish in a very small pond. They had been lucky enough to never meet a shark, until now. President Hyejin addressed the world with 24 hours left on the countdown. My fellow humans, I won't lie to you. The Veltorians are powerful, and this will be the greatest challenge our species has ever faced. But I've seen the intelligence reports, I've talked to our military leaders, and I've studied our enemy. She paused, letting her words sink in. They think we're prey. They think we'll run or hide or beg. They've conquered 200 worlds because those worlds didn't know how to fight back. But we do. For 4 million years, we've been fighting. Fighting nature. Fighting each other. Fighting extinction itself. And we're still here. Her voice grew stronger. The Veltorians are about to learn something that every bully eventually learns. Eventually, you pick on someone who hits back. We are that someone. We are humanity. And we don't kneel. Across Earth, people stood a little straighter. The fear didn't go away, but it was joined by something else: determination, anger, and the knowledge that humanity had survived worse than this. In orbit, weapons platforms that had been hidden for decades powered up. On the Moon and Mars, military bases that officially didn't exist began their final preparations. Throughout the solar system, humanity's true defensive capabilities revealed themselves. The Veltorians were coming. They expected an easy victory. They were about to get the fight of their lives. The Veltorian fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system exactly on schedule. 500 warships, each one larger than a city block. High Prelate Tharn stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and watched the small blue planet on his screen. "Another world falls," he said to his officers. "Begin the final broadcast. Let them hear their doom." Across Earth, screens flickered to life with Tharn's face. "Humans of Earth, your time has expired. You did not surrender. You did not kneel. Therefore, you have chosen destruction. In 1 hour, our fleet will reduce your planet to ash. This is the price of defiance." The broadcast ended. Tharn expected to see cities erupting in panic. He expected governments to flood his communications with desperate pleas for mercy. He had seen it 1,000 times before. Instead, he got a response from Captain Taemin, still in the Horizon Dawn, now positioned near Earth. "High Prelate Tharn, you asked us to kneel. I have a counteroffer. Leave our system immediately and we'll let you survive." Tharn's jaw dropped. Then he laughed. His entire bridge crew laughed. "You'll let us survive? You have no military ships. Our sensors show only civilian vessels and primitive orbital stations. Your sensors are showing you exactly what we want you to see," Taemin replied. "Last chance. Leave now." "Destroy their moon," Tharn ordered. "Let's show them what happens to—" He never finished the sentence. Space around the Veltorian fleet suddenly filled with light. Dozens of human warships appeared, dropping their stealth fields. They had been there the whole time, invisible and waiting. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that the Veltorian fleet wasn't surrounding Earth. They were inside a sphere of human weapons platforms, hidden bases, and warships. The prey had surrounded the predators. "All ships, open fire!" Admiral Jiwoo's voice rang out across the human fleet. The battle for Earth began. Commander Dai Jung led the first strike fleet from Mars Station. 20 destroyers armed with weapons the Veltorians had never seen. Quantum disruption torpedoes hit Veltorian shields and simply passed through them, detonating inside the ships. The shields couldn't adapt because they weren't designed to stop weapons that ignored shields. "Target their formation center," Dai Jung ordered. "Hit them where they're clustered tightest." His ships moved fast, using combat maneuvers that the Veltorian vessels couldn't match. The alien ships were built for intimidation, not agility. They wallowed through space like whales while human ships darted around them like piranhas. On Tharn's flagship, alarms screamed. "Shields failing on decks 7 through 12! Hull breaches on multiple levels! We're taking fire from all directions!" "Return fire!" Tharn shouted. "All ships, return fire!" The Veltorian fleet tried to respond, but their weapons were slow. By the time they locked onto a target and fired, the human ship was already somewhere else. Worse, the human ships seemed to know exactly where the Veltorian weapons would fire before they fired. Every shot missed. "They're predicting our attacks," one officer reported. "How is that possible?" On Earth, Yuna smiled at her screen. She had hacked the Veltorian targeting computers hours ago. Every time they locked onto a target, her systems warned the human ships. The Veltorians were fighting blind while humans could see everything. In space, Lieutenant Sora piloted her fighter through the chaos. She was part of a squadron targeting the Veltorian flagship. Their mission was insane, but that had never stopped humans before. "Listen up," she told her squadron. "We're going to fly straight at their biggest ship. Their shields are designed to stop weapons, not ships. We're going to punch through." "That's suicide," someone said. "That's the plan. Eject at the last second. Let the ship's AI handle the final approach. Trust me." They trusted her. 15 fighters accelerated toward the Eternal Dominion at maximum speed. The Veltorian point defense systems fired, but human fighters were too small and too fast. They weaved through the defensive fire like they were dancing. Sora watched her target get closer and closer. 2 kilometers, 1 kilometer, 500 meters. Eject now. She punched the ejection button, and her seat exploded away from the fighter. Around her, 14 other pilots did the same. The 15 now empty fighters, controlled by combat AIs, slammed into the Eternal Dominion's shields. The shields held for exactly 2 seconds. Then they collapsed from the concentrated impact. The fighters punched through and detonated their fuel reserves inside the shields, right against the ship's armor. Explosions rippled across the flagship's surface. Tharn fell from his chair as the ship rocked. What just happened? They weaponized suicide attacks, but the pilots survived. They ejected before impact. Tharn felt true fear for the first time in his life. What kind of species practiced suicide attacks but found a way to survive them? What kind of enemy was this? The battle raged for 3 hours. The Veltorian fleet had more ships, bigger weapons, and thousands of years of conquering behind them. But humanity had something better: experience. Every war humanity had ever fought taught them lessons. Never fight fair, use the environment, predict your enemy, adapt faster than they can respond, hit hard, hit fast, and never stop moving. The Veltorians fought like they were on parade. Organized, predictable, slow. Humans fought like they were in a knife fight in an alley. Dirty, unpredictable, and absolutely ruthless. Admiral Jiwoo watched the battle from her command center. She saw Veltorian ships exploding. She saw human ships damaged but still fighting. She saw an enemy that had conquered 200 worlds, learning what it meant to face someone who fought back. "Ma'am, they're trying to retreat," an officer reported. "Let them," Jiwoo said, "but damage as many as you can before they jump to faster than light. I want them afraid." The surviving Veltorian ships fled. Out of 500, only 200 made it out. The rest were destroyed or too damaged to jump. Tharn's flagship limped away, trailing atmosphere and debris. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Tharn stared at his screens in horror. They had lost. Actually lost. It wasn't supposed to be possible. "What are they?" he whispered. One of his officers, wounded and scared, answered quietly. "I don't know, High Prelate. But they're not like anyone we've ever faced. They fight like demons. They use tactics we've never seen. And they don't stop. Even when we damaged their ships, they kept fighting. Some of them kept attacking after their ships were hit. How do you fight an enemy that doesn't know when to quit?" Tharn had no answer. He sent a message to the Veltorian homeworld. "Send reinforcements. Send everything we have. These humans, they're not prey. They're predators, and we just walked into their territory." On Earth, people celebrated in the streets. They had won the first battle, but everyone knew the war wasn't over. President Hyejin addressed the planet again. "Today, we proved something important. We proved that humanity doesn't surrender. We proved that we can defend our home. But this is just the beginning. The Veltorians will come back with more ships. So we have a choice. We can wait here for them to return, or we can take the fight to them." She smiled, and it was a predator's smile. "I vote we take the fight to them. Let's show the galaxy what humanity does to bullies. We hunt them down." Across the planet, millions of voices roared approval. The prey had become the hunter, and the galaxy was about to learn what that meant. High Prelate Tharn arrived at the Veltorian homeworld with his tail between his legs. Literally. In Veltorian culture, a lowered tail meant shame and defeat. His had been dragging for 3 days. The Council of Matriarchs waited for him. These were the oldest, most powerful Veltorians alive. They had ruled the Empire for centuries. War Matriarch Skell, the leader, looked at Tharn with cold eyes. "You lost 300 ships to a species we had never heard of until last week," she said. Her voice could have frozen stars. "Explain." Tharn tried to find words. "They fight differently than anyone we've encountered. They use tactics that seem random but somehow work. Their ships are smaller but faster. Their weapons are unconventional, and they don't surrender. Ever." We damaged their ships and they kept fighting. We should have won easily, but they turned our advantages against us. Excuses, Skell hissed. You were careless. You underestimated them. Now the entire galaxy knows the Empire can be defeated. Do you understand what that means? Tharn understood perfectly. Fear was the Empire's real weapon. If species stopped being afraid, they might start resisting. The Empire could crumble. I need reinforcements, Tharn said. These humans won't stop. I can feel it. They're coming for us. Skell stood up, her massive form towering over him. You will have your reinforcements. I'm sending the Worldbreaker Armada. 2,000 ships. The largest fleet ever assembled. But I'm also sending someone to lead it. Me. She leaned down until her face was inches from his. And if we fail, there won't be an empire left to return to. While the Veltorians prepared their counterattack, humanity struck first. Admiral Jiwoo launched Operation Reckoning, and it was beautifully simple. Attack everywhere at once. Commander Kiwan led special operations teams to Veltorian supply lines. They didn't fight fair. They hit shipyards in the middle of the night. They sabotaged fuel depots. They spread computer viruses through Veltorian networks. Every dirty trick humanity had learned in thousands of years of warfare was used. Remember, Kiwan told his teams before each mission, we're not trying to win with honor. We're trying to win. Period. They won. Again and again. Small victories that added up. The Veltorians didn't know how to fight this kind of war. They were used to big battles between fleets. They had never faced guerrilla warfare, sabotage, or psychological operations. But the real blow came from Hei-Wan. The science officer who had first analyzed Veltorian technology had an idea. The Veltorians used faster-than-light travel by opening tunnels through space. What if you could collapse those tunnels while ships were inside them? She spent 3 weeks building it, a weapon she called the Warp Cutter. It was small, elegant, and absolutely devastating. When it worked, it created a cascade failure in faster-than-light tunnels. Ships inside simply ceased to exist. The first test was against a Veltorian supply convoy. 12 ships carrying weapons and food to the front lines. They jumped into faster-than-light travel, and Hei-Wan activated the Warp Cutter. The ships never arrived at their destination. They were simply gone. No debris, no survivors, no trace, just gone. It works, Hei-Wan said quietly, staring at the empty space where the ships had been. She felt sick. She had just killed thousands of beings. But she also knew it was necessary. War was terrible, but losing was worse. Admiral Jiwoo began deploying warp cutters throughout Veltorian space. Supply lines collapsed. Military reinforcements vanished mid-jump. The Empire's logistics, which had worked perfectly for thousands of years, fell apart. Meanwhile, Hei-Wan did something even more dangerous. She contacted the Galactic Council. I am Chief Science Officer Hei-Wan of Earth, she said to the assembled representatives. I'm here to tell you the truth about the Veltorian Empire. Ambassador Kelm looked nervous. This is highly irregular. The Veltorians won't be pleased. I don't care if they're pleased, Hei-Wan replied. You need to know what they really are. She transmitted data to all the representatives. This is evidence of war crimes, genocide, technological suppression. For 10,000 years, the Veltorians have ruled through fear and murder. They haven't advanced scientifically in centuries because they don't need to. They just steal technology from the species they conquer. The representatives looked at the data in shock. Species enslaved for generations. Planets stripped of resources. Entire civilizations erased because they asked too many questions. Why show us this? Asked Representative Quarren. Because you deserve to know what you're serving. And because humanity is going to destroy the Veltorian Empire. When we do, there will be a power vacuum. We'd prefer if that vacuum was filled by a real galactic council, not by chaos. Ambassador Lyra of the Luminary spoke up. What you're suggesting could start a galaxy-wide war. The war already started, Hei-Wan said. The Veltorians started it when they demanded Earth's surrender. We're just finishing it. The question is, will you help build something better? Or will you cower and hope the next empire treats you kindly? The message spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Species that had been silent for centuries began to whisper. Could they really resist? Was freedom possible? On 17 different worlds, rebellions began. Small at first, but growing. The Veltorian garrison troops, used to easy occupation duty, found themselves fighting angry populations. They had the weapons, but the rebels had something better: desperation and hope. Engineer Yunbi worked around the clock improving human weapons. Every battle provided data. Every encounter with Veltorian technology revealed weaknesses. She made human ships faster. She made human weapons more accurate. She found ways to exploit every flaw in Veltorian defenses. The problem with the Veltorians, she explained to her team, is that they stopped innovating. They use the same shields, the same weapons, the same tactics they have used for 1,000 years. We adapt every single day. We learn from every fight. That's our advantage. But the Veltorians weren't completely stupid. War matriarch Skell studied the reports from every battle. She saw the patterns. The humans used speed, surprise, and unconventional tactics. So she planned a response. The Worldbreaker Armada would attack in a way humans couldn't predict, not a direct assault on Earth. Instead, they would hit human colonies and allies first, make humanity spread their forces thin, then strike at Earth when they were weak. It was a good plan. It might have even worked against a normal species. But Skell made the same mistake Tharn had made. She thought humans would fight to protect everything. She thought they would divide their forces to defend their colonies. She didn't understand that humans had a different philosophy. When fighting for survival, you protect what matters most and sacrifice what you must. It was brutal, but it worked. Admiral Jiwoo made the hardest decision of her life. Pull back all forces to Earth and our core systems. We can't defend everything, so we defend what we can't afford to lose. The colonies will have to evacuate or hold out on their own. President Hyejin backed her up despite the protests. I know this is hard, but if we lose Earth, we lose everything. If we save Earth, we can reclaim anything else later. The colonies received the message with fear, but also understanding. They were humans too. They knew the math. Some began evacuating, others prepared to fight as long as they could. All of them understood that this was about species survival. When the Worldbreaker Armada arrived at the first human colony, they found it empty. Buildings intact, systems running, but no people. Skell screamed in frustration. She had wanted a massacre to demoralize humanity. Instead, she got empty cities. Where are they? She demanded. The humans evacuated, War Matriarch, an officer reported. They abandoned the colony. Skell's eyes narrowed. Then we go to Earth. All ships. Maximum speed. We end this now. Her fleet of 2,000 ships turned toward Earth. It would be the largest battle in galactic history. On Earth, Admiral Jiwoo watched them coming. She had 1,000 ships, half the Veltorian numbers. But she also had something Skell didn't have. She had a planet full of angry humans who were absolutely done with being threatened. And she had a plan that was so crazy, it might actually work. It's time, she said to her command staff. Let's show them what happens when you back a predator into a corner. You don't get surrender, you get teeth. The Worldbreaker Armada emerged from faster-than-light travel like an angry swarm. 2,000 Veltorian warships, the largest fleet ever assembled, surrounded Earth. War Matriarch Skell stood on her flagship's bridge, confident this time would be different. No clever tricks will save them now, she said. We outnumber them 2-1. Begin the attack. Admiral Jiwoo watched the enemy fleet deploy on her screens. She looked calm, but inside her heart was racing. Everything depended on the next few hours. If this worked, humanity survived. If it failed, Earth would burn. Execute Operation Thunderstrike, she ordered. What happened next shocked the Veltorians. The human fleet didn't try to defend Earth. Instead, they split into small groups and attacked the Veltorian formation from every angle at once. It looked like suicide. They're panicking, Skell said with satisfaction. All ships, destroy them. But Commander Dae-jung, leading one of the human attack groups, was smiling. Remember your training, he told his ships. We're not trying to win this fight, we're just buying time. Hit them hard, hit them fast, and make them chase us. The human ships darted in, fired, and retreated before the Veltorians could respond effectively. They were like mosquitoes biting a bear. Annoying, distracting, but seemingly not dangerous. Skell grew frustrated. Stop chasing them. Ignore the small ships and focus on the planet. But it was too late. The human ships had pulled the Veltorian fleet out of position, spreading them across a huge area of space. The perfect defensive formation was now a scattered mess. Now, Admiral Jiwoo said quietly, from behind the moon, Mars, and even from inside Earth's atmosphere, thousands of weapons platforms activated. They had been hidden, waiting for exactly this moment. The Veltorians had been so focused on the human fleet that they hadn't noticed these fixed defenses. The platforms fired everything they had: missiles, energy beams, kinetic weapons, and Haywan's warp cutters. Space filled with fire and death. But that still wasn't the main part of the plan. Captain Taemin, watching from the horizon dawn, activated a device that Yunbi had spent weeks building. It was a transmitter that sent a message directly to every Veltorian ship at once, bypassing their command structure. The message wasn't for the officers. It was for the regular soldiers. President Hyjin's face appeared on screens throughout the Veltorian fleet. She spoke directly to the soldiers, and her words were translated into their language. Veltorian warriors, I am President Hyjin of Earth. I don't speak to your leaders. I speak to you. Look around you. Look at the ships burning. Look at your chances of survival. Your leaders sent you here to die so they can maintain power. We didn't start this war. We just want to be left alone. But if you continue this attack, none of you will go home. She paused, letting that sink in. We have evidence that your empire has committed genocide against dozens of species. We have proof that your leaders care nothing for your lives. They see you as tools to be used and thrown away. We're transmitting that evidence to you now. Look at it. See what your empire really is. Throughout the Veltorian fleet, soldiers received the data. They saw the truth about the empire's crimes. They saw how their leaders had hidden failures, blamed soldiers for losses, and sent them into impossible situations. More importantly, they saw that they were losing. Badly. You have a choice, Hyjin continued. Keep fighting and die for leaders who see you as expendable. Or stand down, surrender, and we'll treat you with honor and dignity. We don't want to kill you. We just want to survive. Choose now, Skell screamed in rage. Ignore the human propaganda. All ships, press the attack. Anyone who disobeys will be executed for treason. But fear was already spreading through the fleet. These soldiers had been told they were invincible. Now they were watching their ships explode around them. They had been told humans were weak. Now they were being torn apart by an enemy that seemed to know their every move. One ship captain made a choice. He powered down his weapons and broadcast a surrender. Then another. Then 10 more. Then 100. Skell watched in horror as her fleet disintegrated not from human weapons, but from within. Soldiers who realized they didn't want to die for a lie. Cowards, she shrieked. All of you are cowards. War matriarch Skell did what Veltorian leaders always did when things went wrong. She tried to use the planet cracker weapon. If she couldn't conquer Earth, she would destroy it. The weapon charged, its purple glow building to critical levels. On Earth, billions of people watched in terror as death itself powered up. But Lieutenant Sora and her squadron had been waiting for exactly this. They had studied the weapon carefully. They knew its weakness. It needed 30 seconds to charge and had minimal defensive coverage while charging. All fighters with me, Sora shouted. One shot, one chance. 20 human fighters accelerated towards Skell's flagship at maximum speed. Point defense systems fired, but the pilots were ready. They weaved and dodged with skills earned from thousands of hours of training. Sora reached the weapon first. She didn't eject this time. This was too important. She armed her ship's entire payload and aimed directly at the charging weapon. For Earth, she whispered, and crashed her fighter into the planet cracker at full speed. The explosion was massive. The weapon detonated while still charging, and the feedback tore through Skell's flagship. The ship broke in half, atmosphere and bodies spilling into space. War matriarch Skell died still, not understanding what had happened. She had spent her entire life believing the Empire was invincible. She never realized that invincibility was just a story they told themselves. With Skell dead and their fleet in chaos, the remaining Veltorian ships either surrendered or fled. Out of 2,000 ships, less than 300 escaped. The rest were destroyed, captured, or drifting in space with crews that had given up. The Battle of Earth was over. Humanity had won. But Sora hadn't ejected. Search and rescue teams found her fighters' debris, but they also found something else. An emergency pod. She had managed to eject at the very last second, so close that the explosion had damaged her pod. But she was alive. When they brought her back to Earth, Admiral Jiwoo personally pinned a medal on her chest. "You saved 8 billion people," the Admiral said. "How does that feel?" Sora smiled weakly. "Like I need a very long nap." In the following weeks, the galaxy watched in shock as humanity did something unexpected. They didn't conquer the Veltorian Empire. They dismantled it. Captain Taman led a fleet to the Veltorian homeworld, but not to destroy it. He broadcast a simple message. "The Empire is over. Your leaders are dead or captured. We don't want your world. We don't want your resources. We just want peace." He was met with confusion. Every species the Veltorians had conquered had tried to get revenge, but humans were different. "We're offering you a choice," Taman continued. "Join the new Galactic Council as an equal member or remain isolated. We won't force you." But the age of empires built on fear is over. The Veltorian people, freed from their tyrannical leaders, chose to join. They were tired of war too. Throughout the galaxy, enslaved species rose up. The human victory had shown them that the Empire was a lie. Within 3 months, 17 worlds had freed themselves. Humanity helped where they could, providing weapons, training, and support. The Galactic Council reformed with humanity as a founding member. Ambassador Hei-Wan represented Earth, and her first speech changed everything. For too long, this council has been a place where the strong dictated to the weak. No more. Earth proposes a new charter. Every species, no matter how small, gets an equal vote. Decisions are made by consensus, not by threat. And if any member attacks another, they face the combined response of all others. Ambassador Lyra of the Luminary supported the proposal immediately. So did dozens of other species who had lived in fear for centuries. The new Galactic Council passed the charter unanimously. 6 months after the war ended, Admiral Jiwoo stood on the observation deck of the new Earth Embassy Station. It orbited at a neutral point between Earth and the Galactic Center. Every day, ships arrived bringing diplomats, traders, and tourists from across the galaxy. Some came seeking alliance. They had enemies of their own and wanted humanity's help. Some came seeking trade. Human technology was now highly valuable. Some came just to see the species that had defeated the Empire. Commander Kiwan joined her at the window. "Do you think we did the right thing?" he asked. "Starting a war? We didn't start it, but we finished it in a way that changed everything. Some species think we're heroes. Others are terrified of us. They see what we did to the Veltorians and wonder if we might turn on them next." Jiwoo nodded. "Fear isn't always bad. A healthy amount of fear prevents conflicts. As long as everyone knows that humanity will defend itself and its allies, but won't start fights, we can have peace." "And if someone does start a fight?" She smiled, and it was the same predator's smile that Taman had shown to the Veltorians so long ago. "Then we remind them why starting fights with apex predators is a terrible idea." On Earth, life slowly returned to normal. The war had cost 50,000 lives, mostly from Sora's sacrifice and soldiers in the fleet battles. It was a heavy price, but far less than it could have been. President Hyojin's approval rating was at 95%. She used that support to push for more exploration, more diplomacy, and more integration with the galactic community. Humanity had proven they could fight. Now it was time to prove they could build. In a small ceremony on the Horizon Dawn, Captain Taemin promoted Haewon to the rank of ambassador and Hyunwoo to commander of the ship. "You two started this journey with me," he said. "It's only right you continue it." "Where are we going next?" Haewon asked. Taemin looked at the stars. "Everywhere. There are thousands of species out there. Some will be friends. Some might be enemies. But now they all know one thing about humanity. We don't give up. We don't surrender. And we don't let bullies win." He thought about everything that had happened. First contact had gone terribly wrong. They had been threatened, attacked, and nearly destroyed. But they had survived. Not just survived, thrived. "The Veltorians tried to intimidate us," he said quietly. "They wanted to break us, to make us kneel. Instead, they learned the truth. In a galaxy full of prey, we're the apex predators. Not because we're the strongest or the smartest, but because we never stop fighting for what matters. We never give up. And we never forget that survival isn't given, it's earned." The Horizon Dawn's engines came to life, ready for the next journey. Behind them, Earth shone blue and beautiful, protected now by the strongest military in the galaxy. Around them, new friends and allies watched with respect. And ahead of them, the stars waited, full of possibilities and challenges. Humanity had taken its place in the galaxy. Not as conquerors, not as victims, but as survivors. And that made all the difference.